Oh no, there was no ding, but we're live now. Cool. All right, thanks for joining us for another edition of the News Desk here on TechConnect. I'm Rob Stott, here today with Max Parker. He is the video game columnist at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Max, thanks for stepping in today.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
A little disclaimer. I gotta be upfront about this. I do know Max and I have a bit of a history, so we go back to the college days, Max.
Yep.
I feel, it's a tech show. We could talk about fraternities. We were in a fraternity together, and came up together through the ranks. So it was a good time. And post-college, got involved in a little fantasy football talk. We have a football podcast that we go through every season. So anyone listening that's into fantasy football, feel free. Look for Fully Covered Sports. Shameless plug. But today we're actually, it's kind of cool, Max. We get to talk about work stuff. It's weird having fun talking about work, but that's what we're gonna do, because our worlds kind of collide. The consumer tech world and you're in video games, so it just worked perfectly.
Indeed, so, yeah, absolutely. It's we never really. I mean, we studied the same stuff in college, but we never thought that we'd be covering the same stuff. And it took a while, but we're finally here covering the similar beat.
It did, and what brought us together, I think, is a really enormous event in your space, also the consumer tech space as well, and that's E3. And so I know this isn't your first E3 rodeo coming up in June here, is it? No,
I am a grizzled veteran. This is my 7th E3, wow. So I've seen a lot of changes. Fortunately, it's been in LA, and every single one. It's been in LA for a long time, yeah. So. But I mean, the show has just changed so much, and this is actually going to be that's one of the most different that I've ever. It's one of the most different out of any of the E3s that have ever been, because I mean, the big news is that the big names in the show are dropping out. They're not attending.
You got EA, I know, was the big one. So
that is the biggest. Yeah.
Are they hosting a separate event?
They are. They have a separate event. One's in LA, and the other is I have to actually look at. I can't remember what they're hosting at the same time. It's open to the public. One's in LA just before E3 starts, and then also there's another one in another space. I think it might be on the other coast, just to get in front of as many eyes as they can. And
you say so they're not the only ones. There's other groups that are doing this too.
Nope. No Disney. Wow. And that's also probably has something to do with their canceling Disney Infinity. I don't know if you heard that news, but the big Toys to Life thing, Disney Infinity, has been canceled. There's 2 more things. One for Alice in Wonderland, I think, might be the last figures that are coming out, but then that is essentially gone forever. So no Disney. Wargaming is another company. They do World of Tanks, World of Warplanes, which are huge competitive games, and also they're pretty big overseas as well. They're not going. And then Blizzard Activision won't be there.
Wow.
Call of Duty and
stuff.
Yep. So it is a bizarre show. Because if you've ever seen pictures from the show, EA and Activision have 2 of the largest booths. When you walk in, there's a West Hall and a South Hall. West Hall has the big stuff, the Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo, the booths that take up like the entire floor. Then there's a completely separate room or floor, like convention space. And as soon as you walk in, EA is all you see. It's massive, enormous booth. That's 2 levels. It's just a huge production. And for that not to be there is strange. It's going to be strange. I can't even imagine it, because they've always had that space.
I mean, I'm sure you talk to other video game columnists. What's sort of the vibe amongst the group? I mean, is it sort of a big knock against the show? Is it really going to hurt it?
We'll have to see what the numbers are like. E3 is much less of a necessity than it used to be from a promotion standpoint for these companies. With the way when E3 started, you had print journalists, magazines, trade magazines, that kind of stuff covering the event, and then you'd go gather the information, and then write about it, and then the publication would come out weeks later promoting what you saw. Now, like, everything's live streamed. You don't have to be in the room to experience this stuff. You can PlayStation's press conferences is live streamed, and Nintendo's doesn't even have a live show anymore. It's just live streamed. It's a pre-recorded live streamed show promoting what they have coming up for the next year. But all the shows, PlayStation and Xboxes, they're live streamed. So you don't even have to be in Los Angeles to see what's happening in real time. So, I mean, with the way that media is going in this digital space, there's just not much of a necessity to have this show that costs these companies millions of dollars in EA's case to put these booths together and pay for the promotion and pay for the people to be there. And all, I mean, you don't need to do that anymore.
So other than those guys not being there, what's drumming up hype this year? What is the big news that's sort of coming out of E3?
That's another thing that makes this E3 interesting, is because right now we're right in the middle of these consoles' lifespans for PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, and well, not Nintendo, because Nintendo is probably going to be the first one of the big three to come out with a new piece of hardware, because the Wii U is pretty much been a bust. But so we're right in the middle of it. But out of nowhere, we might see new consoles being shown. There's a rumor about the PlayStation 4.5 or PlayStation 4K or whatever you want to call the code name. So there's rumors that that's going to be shown at the show. There's rumors that the Xbox One will get a slimmed down version, and that would be a good move. Maybe not upgrade, but there's some things that aren't used anymore with the Xbox One, like the Kinect port. I mean, they don't even sell Xbox Ones with the Kinect, so you can manufacture an Xbox that doesn't even have that port on it, so you can slim it down that way. It also has the HDMI in that you can plug a cable box into. No one really uses that anymore either. So you could really slim down that hardware and make a cheaper version of the Xbox One. So that's a rumor that we could possibly see that. And then VR is officially in consumers' hands now. So you've got Oculus Rift, the Vive, HTC Vive, and of course the PlayStation VR, which we're going to get a ton of information. That comes out in October. So the Vive and Oculus are already out now, and PlayStation VR is right around the corner. So this is going to be a big show to showcase the next steps in VR. So it's exciting. We didn't think we'd see any new hardware this show, but there's the potential to be a ton of new hardware.
All of a sudden. And, it's kind of funny because VR has sort of been in just the consumer electronic space in general has been talked about. It was huge at CES this year. And you kind of see it spilling over into the other shows now, especially E3. And the thing that makes me think about E3 with this is that at CES, the talk was all about, the content's not there yet. I mean, all these companies, the content producers, TV show broadcasters, and all those companies have to sort of catch up with the content. But the industry that's there right now, and where it's what's sort of helping VR succeed right now is gaming, with companies like Oculus and, like you mentioned, PlayStation has the VR coming out. Their VR coming out. HTC's got the Vive. I know there's other companies that sort of don't have hardware that is as good or as powerful as any of those companies have. But I mean, gaming is really driving VR right now. And I mean, just in did it exist at last year's E3?
Yeah, absolutely. Oculus was there. I think Oculus has been there the last two shows. I think 2 years ago they weren't acquired by Facebook yet, and then they were acquired by Facebook last year and showing football.
But this is actually the first show though where they will all those products will be available to consumers.
Right.
So
right. Yep. So I'm sure that every VR owner is looking for new games to play on VR. If they shelled out the money for a computer that can run the stuff, which is a $500 graphics card, and that's just the graphics card. We're talking about a $1,000 plus PC plus the Oculus, which costs $500, $600. And then the Vive, which is even more expensive. They want to buy new games because every game is a new VR experience. It's all experimental at this point. So
it's beyond just roller coasters and looking around on a boat out in the ocean.
Exactly. So and Sony is in an interesting position because this is going to be their PlayStation VR is going to be way more accessible to the average consumer than Oculus or the Vive, just because what I said. I mean, people who already have a PlayStation 4 can just spend the money on the headset rather than having to buy the PC. I mean, it's less expensive. Now, the tech inside it is slightly inferior, but it's still a really good VR experience. So that's another exciting thing. I mean, I'm excited to see what Sony has to say about the PlayStation VR.
Right. Switching gears a little bit, I know, mobile gaming might be a touchy subject for those at E3, but it's a fact that it's here. It's been here for a while. It's been slowly chipping away. What's the mobile gaming presence like at E3? If there is one? I mean, are those companies afraid to show up there just because of what the reaction from the console guys might be like, or just sort of in your 7 years of going to E3, how has mobile's sort of integration into the show changed?
It's so bizarre to see that there isn't much of a mobile presence at E3 because they have such a huge, they own the gaming space basically. I think it was last year that King, the makers of Candy Crush, now Candy Crush has kind of been surpassed since then, but at that time it was like King had made more in the last year than Nintendo had made in the last 5 or something like that. But mobile gaming is the future. That's what these companies want to invest in. Disney's the same way. That's why they axed Disney Infinity, just because there's no point in investing money in console space anymore when they can just either license stuff out, license their titles out, so have somebody else make the games, which is like the case in Star Wars Battlefront. Mm-hmm. Disney sold the rights to, have them make Battlefront, but Disney is not involved in any of the development process. So they just make money off of that deal and don't have to pay for a development team. So, but anyway, getting back to what we were saying about just the mobile space in general, E3 has always been focused on consoles, and that's been okay for the mobile companies because they don't need the promotion. And even if they came to E3 and spent the money on a booth and the people to run and make the booth and PR and all that stuff, it wouldn't really benefit them. They're fine making tons of money on microtransactions and being at the top of the Apple App Store and Google Play Store. It's not necessary for them. There's not a huge mobile presence, and there doesn't need to be. So, do
you think from the companies that are there, the console makers? I mean, what's their reaction, or how are they trying to either catch up with or make a play in the mobile space?
We're seeing it with Nintendo, slowly but surely. They I don't know. Have you played Miitomo?
I have not.
That's their first mobile game. You know of it? Yeah. So it's their first mobile game. It takes it collects a ton of personal data, but does it in such a cute way that no one really cares. It made a wave when it first came out. It's just it's a living sim. Basically, you have your little figure that resembles you. It's like a cartoon version of you. So that was their first mobile game, and there are others coming. There's going to be an Animal Crossing mobile game. So they're getting there, but they're still primarily focused on the console space. But they're getting into the mobile space because their investors are pushing them in that direction, because that's where all the money is. Sony, not really at all. Some games have a second screen app that you can download, a second screen experience for the console games. And there's a messenger app, but there's no real big push for Sony and PlayStation to try to tap into that mobile market for some strange reason. And then Microsoft,
Xbox has the Microsoft tie, but
but the Windows phones aren't lighting the world on fire. and so the big three console manufacturers have no way, or I don't know if it's interest or just have no way of tapping into that mobile market, or just don't have any interest in it. It's bizarre.
It's crazy. It's crazy. Yeah. We'll see how long they can keep up with this the shtick that they're on. But you feel like some push come to shove, something's going to have to give. So
Apple. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, that was Alexa talking behind me. We can fix that.
All right.
Post.
That's funny.
So last question for you. As you get ready to go to E3, what are you sort of most excited about and looking forward to seeing?
Well, from a professional standpoint, I will say that the idea of new hardware coming is really exciting, because when new hardware is coming, that pushes traffic, that pushes viewership. That's where the interest is. People can take or leave new games that are coming out for a new system, but anyone who's ever owned a console is interested in a new console. That's always how it is. Even people who've owned I mean, casual gamers who have owned just a Wii in the past are curious about a new Nintendo platform. Hopefully, it's more exciting than the Wii U, than the idea of the Wii U. Speaking of Nintendo, but we'll see. But the fact that there could be 3 new consoles coming makes this a really exciting show, despite the fact that we're not going to see EA or Disney or the other companies we mentioned at the show. They're still going to have the announcements, like we said, with the EA Play events that are going to be happening just before E3. But it's going to be an exciting show, way more exciting than anyone would have thought 6 months ago. So it's going to be a good one.
Awesome. Well, Max, I'm glad we got to finally, after all this time, get on and get our careers to intersect here and do a little coverage of video games. And it just fits so smoothly. I'm surprised it could, it took this long. It's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. It's perfect. It's great.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us on News Desk, and thank you guys for watching. Awesome. And that's a wrap.
Sweet. All right.